Welcome to the This Prepared Life podcast. This Prepared Life is all about homesteading and preparedness. It is about going back to our roots and doing things in a different way. It is about women reclaiming skills and lost arts. It is about slow and steady preparedness. It's about being prepared, not scared. And most of all, it is about you finding education and encouragement. I am so excited to have another guest on the podcast for you today. Guest episodes are my favorite, and it is just so much fun to hear the stories and journeys of other women who prep. We get the honor of hearing from Millie Copper today. Millie is a wife, mom, grandmother, and homestead prepper living in Wyoming. She's also an author, a blogger, and I know that we can all learn a lot from her. Welcome, Millie. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this.
Me too. I have been just so excited. So I first came across you at a prepper expo, and I saw your table of books, and I was like, "What is cozy apocalyptic fiction?" And I went over there and I talked to the person who was manning your table, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to try it out." So, and I have just absolutely loved your books. And I know a lot of my Instagram followers have heard that you were going to be a guest, and they're so incredibly excited because they love your books. And I just can't wait to hear more of your story today. So, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your family, whatever you want to share?
Sure. Okay, great. So the person that was manning my table is my daughter. I have four daughters. She's the second to the oldest. So four daughters and a son who's still at home. All the girls are all grown up, off on their own. I even have three grandchildren with another one due in August. Um, my daughter that was at the booth is she's like the brains behind this whole book operation. Honestly, if it wasn't for her, I I don't think those books would have seen the light of day. So she's really been a huge help for me as far as the book business and just bouncing off ideas. The expo that we went to, I was like, I don't know. And she's like, oh, mom, it'll be so much fun. And she was right. We had such a good time. I think when you met my daughter, I was actually at another table giving a demonstration on sprouting, how to sprout seeds, beans, grains, for food storage, because the expo was a preparedness expo. So it was all about different preparedness things. So that expo and teaching that class, it's a class I taught quite a few times. I ended up writing a book based on that class that just came out last month too. So it was a really productive expo for me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And yeah, you were. I saw you over there doing your demonstration after I had talked to your daughter. So tell us where you live. Are you homesteader, prepper? Define yourself.
Oh,
I'm
define
Put
myself.
yourself in a box.
Yes. I live in Wyoming. Um, and boy, it's not yet spring here. It's trying to be spring. It's raining this morning, but I think we're getting snow this afternoon. So, but it's only April 22nd, so we expect snow still. I I am a homesteader. We have 20 acres, and right now we only have chickens. We did have goats, but just chickens now. And actually, right now we live pretty easy. For 3.5 years, we lived off the grid. We didn't have running water. The house had walls, but it wasn't finished. It was quite the adventure. We moved in when it was not much more than a shell. Uh, that first winter was interesting. It gets chilly here. And one morning we came downstairs and the dog's water dish had frozen. There was ice on it. So we really focused on insulation after that. And now it's pretty much, our house is pretty much finished, and it's easy living with no longer off the grid. We do still have a small solar system that's independent. So if the power goes out, which happens fairly often here, we still have lights and a few outlets that work when the power's out. And we do have running water, which is, great luxury after not having it for so long. I I don't know. I guess homesteading in some ways it was like the old Little House on the Prairie ways. My adult children kind of made fun of me a little bit, that we were so rustic. But I don't know. It was a great adventure, and I really used a lot of that time in my fiction series because I knew what it was like to live without power. And in my fiction books, they end up not having any power. So I was able to draw on my own experiences to a point. I mean, obviously, we had it pretty easy. The grocery stores are still running, and not like in post apocalyptic fiction books where there's usually not grocery stores.
Tell us a little bit about your journey to preparedness. I know you shared a little bit about that with me in our phone call, but can you share with our listeners just like what that looked like for you, and then share about how you and your husband kind of came on that journey together?
Yeah, and it was an accident. I had no idea. I mean, I guess I did have a little idea. I'm uh, older, not, of an age that I remember Y2K and everything that went with Y2K and what we expected it to be like, but I didn't do anything about it. I mean, I had like this little loose plan, but I didn't have any beans, rice, or anything. Um, and then Y2K didn't happen. I didn't give much more thought to anything preparedness related until December of 2007. We lived on the Pacific coast in Oregon, and we had what they called, I can't remember what it was called, the Great Coastal Gale, maybe. It was this huge windstorm, and it knocked out our power, knocked down trees, it blew out windows in town. It was really kind of apocalyptic. So we didn't have any power from Sunday until Saturday, and we were in a fully electric house, electric heat. We had a pellet stove, which has to have electricity in order to provide any heat. We had an electric cook stove. Just everything was electric. And the whole county was severely affected. The grocery stores were closed. The gas stations, they didn't have, there was no fuel for the first few days. And then there was a line and a limit. You could only get like 2 gallons. I think it was 2 gallons. So it was really a big change. And then after the power came back on, there was a mudslide up the road. So the highway where trucks would come in to restock us was closed. So it was about a month probably before things went back to normal. And during that time, I really started thinking, what if? What if, you know, something like this happens again? And I don't want us to, we were fine. I mean, we were really fine, but I wanted to be better than fine. I wanted it to be, if something longer term happened, we would not have been fine. And I knew that we needed to make some changes. So that was the beginning of it. And I started researching it. That was in the early days of, I mean, the internet was around, but that was before I was glued to the internet, like it seems I am now. I got stuck on some rabbit holes, and I really learned a lot and just sorted out, what is what. Uh, and my husband at first was like, I don't know about this. But then eventually it was kind of funny because he heard something on the radio, because around that same time was when the mortgage industry was imploding, and we were at the recession. So he started hearing about preparedness on some radio station. So he comes home one day and he's like, I think we ought to start being prepared. I'm like, really? I think we've been talking about this for a couple of months now. So he was fully on board after that. And we moved even with the mortgage industry bad, we were able to sell our house and move to Wyoming during that time. It was just, it really worked out. I really saw it work out really well. And once we moved to Wyoming, we got pretty serious about it. We started raising our own food, and stocking our cabinets. And we lived in a really tiny house then and got really creative with where we were going to store things. So it was a really good experience. It was also tough because I we had a young son. He was born during that time, and my husband worked as a janitor at a school, and I only worked part time, so we really had to make the dollars stretch to not only meet our everyday needs, but to put things aside for an unknown future.
I would love to hear a little bit more about your creative storage. That is a question I get a lot, and I am blessed too. We have this basement in our 1927 farmhouse that, we have ample storage in, but a lot of people send me questions about, how can I think outside of the box in my storage? I'm in a condo or, just a smaller space. Can you share some of your creative storage solutions?
Yeah, and I think some of them don't wouldn't work for everybody. We lived a couple miles out of town, out of a small town. All the towns in Wyoming are smaller. Largest city's only 53,000 or something. So it's maybe living rurally, it's we had lower expectations for what our house needed to look like. So um, keep that in mind. But we used under the bed storage, of course, which is very common. Every closet, what we weren't using for clothing space, we added shelves at the ends of the closets to to be able to tuck things in. I did a lot of lacto fermentation during that time, and my closet was perfect because it was cold like a root cellar. So that was the closet where all of our lacto fermentation went. Bookshelves. So I have a book problem. I have had a lot of bookshelves, but my books don't go all the way to the back of the bookshelves. So behind the books, we lined up cans. So all of our canned goods were lined up behind the books. Um, let's see. Oh, I had freestanding shelves that you can buy, the metal freestanding shelves, and can adjust the size on the shelves for our 5-gallon buckets. And we just put curtains around those to close them off so you couldn't see there's 5-gallon buttons unless you pull back the curtain. Um, we had a empty spot in one of the halls at the back and built in a little closet there that wasn't there before, with like it was one of those little doors you can push on the door and it pops open. So it was kind of almost like hidden because there's no doorknob or anything. Gosh, trying to think. We had a double wide. We bought a used double wide for cash. It was so we saved money doing that. But underneath of in the crawl space, I guess that's what you call it, crawl space area, we had a space where we were able to put buckets and garbage cans, lidded garbage cans underneath there. Uh, I can't really think. I mean, I'm sure that there were other things, but those are the ones that really come to mind.
Those are great. Yeah, those are, it's like people will send me messages asking, and I'm like, okay, think outside of the box. And it sounds like you guys really did. So those are some great options for people to think about. Can you share a little bit about what inspires you on your prepper homestead journey?
My children, I would say, making sure that all my kids know they can always come home if they think that they need to. That it's not going to be. It wouldn't be completely easy because there'd be plenty of work to do, but I would say that they're the main inspiration. And I don't know if this is inspiration, but just looking at the world today, I mean, the last 2 years have been nuts and doesn't seem to be improving any.
Yes, there have been so many conversations in online spaces or with people I know about the state of our world right now. That could be an entire podcast all into itself. Can you share a little bit? Everyone's prepper journey looks so different because we are all unique and we live in different areas and our family sizes are different. Can you share a little bit about what might be unique about your prepping, your system, your organization?
I don't know that it's very different than what many people do. The only thing maybe a little different is I have really focused on traditional foods. We talked a little bit about that, the sprouting, being able to have, I mean, 400 pounds of wheat is great if you've got, buckets and buckets of wheat, but wheat kernels aren't edible as they are. So what are you going to do with that wheat? So making sure you know how to use that wheat, making sure I knew what to do with it because I wasn't much of a baker or I wasn't even much of a cook. So I've really focused on that aspect of it. So now I know, I mean, here's what I can do with this wheat. I can sprout it. I can mill it. I can make sourdough. I can cook it into cereal. That's how has it been used throughout the centuries, and that's what I look at as ways to use it in the future. And how can I cook? I no longer have an all electric house. I when we built a our house after saving up for several years and living in that double wide, we bought a new piece of property and we've been building our house, the off grid living that we were doing a little bit at a time. And as we've added to the house, we've made specific choices, like my stove, my oven, and my stovetop are are propane powered. I guess that's the right thing to say. But it's a specialty one. A lot of propane stoves still need to be plugged into an electrical outlet to work, but this one runs on, I think it's 8 AA batteries that that gives it the spark. But even if those batteries are dead, it has the ability to light the oven. A lot of ovens have a safety feature, so you can't manually light it with a match. Ours doesn't have that safety feature. It's built to be able to use with no power, no batteries, nothing. So choices like that, so we can continue to cook, to be able to prepare our meals. And besides for that, we have the wood stove. Our main heat is a wood stove. And before our kitchen was finished, that was where I did all of our cooking, on top of the wood stove, inside of the wood stove, outside on a rocket stove, outside in a sun oven. Just a lot of different alternative methods for preparing meals.
Can you share a little bit about I'm going back to your off-grid time and you just talking about alternative cooking kind of made me want to go there. Can you share a little bit about what you learned in the years that you guys were off grid?
What I learned is it was exhausting. Uh, That's one reason we're not off grid anymore. It is a lot of work. And I can't even imagine what it would, well, I can imagine, but I don't want to, what it would be like if, if you have to go and hunt your food and grow your food. Also, in addition to the off grid preparation, cooking, the ways of cooking. And I did laundry by hand, not all of it. We still went to the laundromat some. So I did, that. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
I think sometimes, at least in the homestead aspect of all of this, there's this romanticized notion of how grand and slow and peaceful life might be. And you are so right. Grid goes down. We are all going to be so tired all the time.
Yes. Yes. It's,
Um,
and I think there's a lot to be said about the using the sun cycles and, working from sun up to sundown.
mhm.
I think that that would really be very realistic because there's work. But now, like here, you can't work. It's weather dependent. So, I mean, how much when we have a blizzard going on, there's not a lot that can be done outside. Even if there needs to be, it's just not safe. So there's that to consider too.
Yeah. Yeah. We're in North Idaho. So, yeah, we definitely get lots of snow, and we had some -10, -15-degree days. And I do not want to be outside in that. How low do you go in Wyoming? I mean, I'm sure it's even worse.
I think the lowest that we've been here was 42, negative
Oh
42.
my God.
And
I
that's
can't
not
even
counting the
imagine.
wind. So that's it's chilly, but once you get down there, how cold is it really? So, but they say it's a dry cold, which there's a lot of truth to that. It can be 0 outside, and if the wind's not blowing, it doesn't feel that bad. Oh, it's when that wind comes up, and Wyoming is known for wind. We just a couple of days ago had 128 mile an hour recorded about 2 miles from me. Yeah, so that's cold. When it's cold and windy like that, it's really cold.
You talked a little bit ago, you were talking about traditional foods and learning skills. And that is something I just really urge people who maybe aren't on land yet or are living in the city, that homesteading and prepping isn't about stuff. It's more about skills, and you can start right where you're at learning things. What have you found to be some of your just most valuable skills?
Well, I do love sprouting. I like sourdough. I really like the kitchen skills, but learning how to light a fire. That's something I do every day now. Well, during this time of year, looking forward to the days I don't have to light a fire. But that's I and yes, I think it's great to be able to light a fire by rubbing a couple of sticks together. But buy matches, buy lighters. Have the stuff that you need to not make your life difficult, at least to start, so you can learn those extra skills. I mean, I think it's great. I mean, we do a lot of camping and a lot of outdoor stuff, but I am telling you, I would not want to have to survive in the wilderness. I wouldn't. I i would rather figure out what I need to do to hunker down at home instead of bug out and live in the trees.
Same here. Well, I think maybe I probably could. I don't want to at all. Like, my husband loves backpacking, and him and my kids go backpacking, and they just adore it. And I'm like, no, I like my plumbing. I'm going to make my plans for, if it's not there, to be here at home enjoying my house and my kitchen. So, you have a website, Homespun Oasis, and can you share a little bit about your real food cooking and what kind of information people can learn there?
Yes. So that Homespun Oasis, I started it in 2009, I think. And the original name of my website was Real Food for Less Money, because it was during the time that we were learning preparedness. We were also changing from a standard American diet to a traditional foods diet, um, more focused on the teachings of Weston A. Price, who was a dentist who traveled the world in the 30s and 40s and really studied not just people's dental health, but their physical health, and compared it to their diet. And you would think in the 30s and 40s that people were eating pretty good. And a lot of them did, but that was also the time when processed foods were really becoming popular, the ease of it. And he noticed a direct correlation between more processed foods and less dental and physical health. Uh, and so it's really interesting. Some of his studies are, and he even noticed that as parents were eating more processed foods, the face shapes of their children were changing. Their faces were becoming narrower, and they were having problems breathing, and children weren't able to nurse as well. And his theory was this was diet related. So it's actually pretty interesting. And I had been experiencing some gut issues for several years, and my daughter, my youngest daughter, she was I think 12, around 12 at that time, and both she and I had irritable bowel syndrome, and being able to switch to the traditional foods diet got it under control for both of us. It made a huge difference in the way that we felt. So seeing the results, I stuck with it. But our switch from a standard American diet to a traditional foods diet was pretty slow. We didn't have the money to just go out and buy all organic and the best of everything. So we did a lot of inexpensive changes like bone broth. Being able to make broth from basically leftovers that would normally be thrown away was one of the ways that we stretched our money. We had 2 acres then, and we started raising chickens for both meat and eggs. And that made a huge, huge difference. It was a lot of time, but it made a huge difference in being able to provide good quality meat. We ate a lot of beans and rice, and beans and rice is also still a main part of our food storage. I didn't know how to cook dried beans really. My mom had cooked them when I was a child, but I never paid attention, so I had to learn how to cook them, learn how to use them, and that journey is there's a lot of information on our beans and rice in on my blog. I call it a stretchy beans 13 week rotating meal plan. We ate beans for like 3 nights a week during our tightest financial times, and that it was actually really good to learn how to use them and be able to create different meals. So we weren't just having a bowl of beans every night; it was different flavors each night. So that's on there, and that became a book, Stretchy Beans, which is also available for sale on there. So a lot of traditional foods, simple foods, homesteading, as we have learned how to raise chickens and goats, and our off-grid experiences are recorded on there, and our preparedness. I have a lot of preparedness articles on different aspects of it. I try not to be too over the top about the sky falling. Um, Even though sometimes I might feel like the sky is falling, I try to remember that it's not, and not reflect that the sky is falling in my articles too much.
Can you share and you shared a bunch of them in what you just said, but specifically share some of your best tips for budget prepping and or budget cooking?
Yeah, beans and rice, buy in bulk. That actually was one of our biggest things, was being able to find something we liked, like pinto beans. Those are common. Everybody knows what those are, but I'd buy a small package, find a few ways to cook them, and then I would search them out to buy them in bulk for less per pound. Azure Standard, which is in, you're probably familiar with that. It's in Oregon. It's a one of the companies that I really liked ordering from. We had a drop, and it was easy to be able to get stuff from them once a month. So buying in bulk, but the important thing is buying what you're going to eat and eating what you buy. So that goes back to the saying of store what you eat and eat what you store, which is something that I definitely do. I mean, we do now we have things are not as tight, and so we have added some dehydrated, or I'm sorry, freeze dried number 10 cans just to have, but our storage is still mainly bulk items, beans, rice, whole grains, just very, very simple, and a lot of spices. I am a huge fan of spices. So I like Frontier. I think it's called Frontier. They have some good spices that you can buy by half pound or a pound. If there's a spice that we like and use a lot, I buy it in bulk.
Yes, I love Azure Standard. That is like every month. And my drop is 10 minutes from my house, which I adore. Like, I don't have to go into town. It's great. So I just did the math. You've been prepping for 15 years. That is a long time. And I would love to hear, just as you look back on your journey, what have you done well and what would you change?
Oh boy. Um, the biggest thing I think I would change is I would start, well, I don't know if I would change it. I was going to say I would start with a better plan, but I've learned a lot in the hard ways. So I don't know that I would really change that because it's put me where I am. But there have been times when I've spent money I probably, if I would have had a better plan, wouldn't have needed to spend. Um, so maybe a plan would be a good idea. I like spreadsheets and organization, so that's good. This house that we built, I would have maybe added a few more storage places. So our house isn't very large. I think it's maybe, I don't even think it's 1,400 square feet. So, but it does have has some nice storage areas like under the eaves and extra cabinets and a nice pantry. So, but I could definitely do more. I'd love to have a basement like you have. That would have been good to build under the house. So we are looking at putting in a root cellar, and it's kind of funny. The guy that I talked to about building the root cellar, I've got solar panels on my house, and I've talked to him a few times, and I think he kind of had my number. So when I said I'd really like to put a root cellar, where do you think you could put it? He looked at me and he goes, "Do you really want a root cellar, or are you putting in a bomb shelter?" So. Uh, so that it was kind of funny. I still don't have my root cellar, but one of these days I'm going to get it. But I do think more storage would have been better to plan for. But then on the flip side, you got to store things so you can find them again. I'd like to focus on like one item each year. And before COVID, I had decided that year was going to be, I was going to focus on medical supplies. So I had to pull out everything and see what I had. And I was surprised to discover that I had multiple items that I already had two or three of because I'd forgotten that I bought them.
Can you talk a little bit more about the one item per year
Oh,
and what
one
that looks like?
Yeah, one, and maybe item's not the right thing, one category per year. So that's like Joe and I, my husband and I will say, okay, well, this year we're going to focus on, and that year before, so that was in January, the COVID stuff. I hadn't really heard about it much. I started hearing little whispers, I guess, at the end of January. But so I'd already started on buying medical supplies, and I just knew that that was going to be our focus for that year. And I had made up a list. Okay, in January I'm going to buy this. In February I'm going to buy this. In March I'm going to buy this. And went through what I'm going to buy each month for the year because it's going to be that was going to be our focus. Well, COVID changed everything, and I ended up ordering everything in you know February so I could make sure we had what we needed. But it's not the best way to do it. It's really better to be able to take the time, look for sales, and look where the best buys are instead of buying everything at one time. And I guess maybe I would change that. I wouldn't be so reactive if I knew then what I know now. So, but and then last year I wanted to beef up some of our so last year, one of the things we had a couple of things we worked on last year, but one of them was clothes. So we spent a lot of time in um, used clothing stores, thrift stores, and yard sales, looking for clothes for you know multiple sizes for us and our son and our grandchildren, and having that. And actually, that's something I've done off and on even before I started prepping as yard selling and thrifting to provide clothes. Have you ever heard of the book The Tightwad Gazette? I'm sure you have. Yeah. Yeah. So she has some really good articles on how she did clothes and kept them in bank boxes and labeled them for the kids. So, and I've kind of tried to follow that plan even before I ever did preparedness because, as a mom of 5, you kinda gotta look for the bargains on clothes.
Yeah, clothing preps is something people, like when I talk about it on Instagram, people are like, "You prep clothing, how does that work?" And I'm like, "Do you have a hand-me-down box?" And they're like, "Yeah." That's a prep right there. I think that, sometimes there's this huge misconception about, and you can't see me, but I'm, finger air quoting the word prepper, that, we're all bunker living, gas mask wearing people, which I'm totally fine with. Like, that's great too. But there are so many different ways as mamas and grandmothers that we prep for our families, and we just don't even know we're prepping.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think clothes is huge. And, as a writer of fiction books, that's something that I think about when I'm writing. What are you going to do when you rip those pants when you're out cutting wood? So, you can't just run down to Walmart and get a new pair.
You just brought up a writer of fiction books, and I am so excited to talk about that. So let's jump in there. Um, so you say you are cozy apocalyptic fiction. Can you define that for us?
Well, it's not an actual genre yet, but it's yet. I'd love to see it become an actual genre. Wouldn't that be fun? So my books are cozy. I call them cozy because there's no profanity. There's people die. I mean, it's the apocalypse, but I try not to go into too many gory details about the deaths. There's no on-screen sex. Um, and so it's kind of like a cozy mystery, only it's about the apocalypse.
And I think it was great. Like, that phrase drew me to your table because I was like, I have to know what this means. And I have had people ask when I've recommended your books, are these, as a Christian, can I read this? Because sometimes that's an issue. Some people don't want all the language and the sex and all of that in their books. Um, and so women, at least the women I'm interacting with, really appreciate that about your writing. So I am not done with the Havoc in Wyoming series. I have 2 books left, so, like, you're probably really good about not spoiling anything, but can you share a little bit about your inspiration for that series?
Sure, yep. But let me just back up really quick before I forget. You said that Christians read the book, and I should say that they are, in addition to cozy apocalyptic fiction, they are what some people call futuristic Christian, or because they are faith based. There's a lot. So for some people, too much. A lot of there's God talk about God. There's prayers. There's scriptures in it. I mean, my books 4, 5, 6, and 7, their titles are all taken from one of the Psalms. So it's they are faith based also. So not and that's not for everyone, and I understand that. I am specifically writing for a specific person, I guess, and uh, she's probably like a 50-year-old female. It's that's a I guess that's a thing that you're supposed to think of one person to write for. So I don't know. But let's see. Let me go back to what your question was. My inspiration. Yeah. So in addition to cozy apocalyptic fiction and futuristic Christian, there's also it's heavy prepper. There's especially in like the first 3 books. There's a lot of preparedness in the stories. The books are everything that happens at first seems like it's an isolated event and it's just slowly picking away at society. Well, in our main family, the Caldwells, they live in a small town in Wyoming, and we get to see what they are doing to in reaction to what's happening around them. So they enact what they call Plan A, and Plan A takes them honestly shopping a lot. Uh, and is this I wrote these books before COVID, and Jake Caldwell goes to town and he buys groceries, and you know what else he buys? He buys toilet paper. So, um, I actually got some comments, not very good comments, because one lady had commented that there is no way people would go to town and buy toilet paper. Ha ha. I got the last laugh on that one.
Yes, you did. I like to hold a book in my hand kind of person. I like paper, and I do have books that I will just, read on my phone. I think we have the Kindle app or something like that. But I much prefer paper books. And so I bought book one at the expo because I was like, I'm going to try this out and we'll see what it's like. And I was maybe a third of the way into it, and I'm a pretty fast reader. I was about a third of the way into it when I'm like, I need to order more of these books because in the time it's going to take them to get to me, I'm going to be done. And I need to like have that next book ready because that's how good the story was. What ended up happening was Amazon took longer to ship it. And I read books 1 through 5 on Kindle before the books even arrived. Like, they were great. And I remember walking my husband through, like, we'd be driving in the car. I'm like, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, and now this is happening. And it just spurred really great conversations with us. So I think, like I said, I still have 2 books to go, so I'm not done yet. But books 1 through 3 were, you just painted a great mental picture of the characters and the family and, their prepper lifestyle and their thinking. And I think even though it is a fiction book, people can read that and glean so much information out of it. And I just absolutely loved that about the book. So
Well, thank you. And I would like to, they are serious preppers. Let's just call them serious preppers. And they put a lot of things in place. I mean, honestly, they're my dream. The Caldwells were living my dream. I'd love to have what they have. And it seems like, they've got everything, they've got these huge plans, but the big question is, can they keep it? So, and I think that's the interesting thing for me. We might have the best plans, and I'm a big fan of community. I really think that if the worst happened, we're not going to do well being lone wolves. We need to work together, but not everybody has the same goals in mind. So that's where the challenge comes up, and that actually, as you know from reading the stories, that's a big part of it is the inter the react the actions between the people. It's not just about how many gun battles can they get in. It's the challenges of working together and living closely together and a community coming together, and not everybody has the same end goal in mind.
yeah, do you have any words of advice or wisdom for new preppers um, who are looking for that community? Because not everyone knows someone who preps, um, or just, yeah, advice. You've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, and I think probably we're such a tight-lipped community. It's There's so much talk, or maybe not talk, about don't share your plans, don't you've got to keep quiet what you're doing because so and so is going to come knocking on your door and take everything you've got. And I understand that fear. I do. But I mean, I told you about the guy who's going to dig my root cellar, who thought it was probably a bomb shelter because I guess I don't hide it very well. And so if you see somebody with solar panels, do you automatically think they're a prepper? In Wyoming, I guess you do. In other places, probably not. I think it's hard because you want to keep quiet because you want to not everybody to know what you have, but you also do need to find that community and find people that you can trust. I don't know how to go about it in a way other than maybe form friendships first, and then when you're comfortable with that friendship, then approach the subject. And sometimes that's for us. I mean, it was starting to have people over for dinner and, being comfortable with them. And I'm not much of an entertainer. I've always been kind of um, introverted. It's hard for me to want to have people into my house. I mean, I have to clean it if they're going to come over, and that's a challenge. But we started inviting people over and really found out that there's a lot of like-minded people that I would have never have expected. Um, and it does take a little bit of going out on a limb. But I think when you really listen to the leadings that maybe you're getting, I felt like God would lead us to talk to certain people or to not talk to certain people too. And I think that we really just tried to follow those leadings slowly, slowly.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, we have to go out on a limb sometimes to create that community because people are so important, having people in our lives. Can you share? We talked about the Havoc in Wyoming series. You have another. Do you have one more fiction series? What other fiction books do you have?
Yeah, I do. So I have the Havoc in Wyoming, which kicked it all off. And so that's 7 books. And then I also have 3 side stories that are with that series. I do have that. If you're on Kindle, that's available in one download. So you get 10 books in one download, which is kind of nice. And then I have a spin off series from Havoc in Wyoming with some of the same people that we meet throughout the Havoc series and set in the same world. And it's called Montana Mayhem. And there's 5 books. I'm sorry, I get confused. I think there's 4 books out already in that, and I think book 5 comes out the end of next month, the end of May. Um, so we're yeah, it comes out May 26th, and then it'll have I think one more book in it, so it'll be a 6 book series. I think so. I write. I'm what's called a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants. I usually don't really know what's going to happen. I might have a general idea or think I know what's going to happen, but what tends to happen in my stories is the people in them get a mind of their own and take me off on some journey I wasn't expecting. So while right now I think it's going to be a 6 book series, my people might have a different idea. So it might be a 7 book series or 8 book series. I don't really know.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of annoying, I'll be honest. I've tried doing an outline and it just didn't work out too good. I couldn't stick with it. So it, I don't know. I'm surprised some days, just as surprised as the reader is.
you also have nonfiction books. Can you share those with us?
Yes. So I have, 5, maybe 5 nonfiction books. I actually, that's where I started writing was I had the blog and I started writing nonfiction books. I have one called Design a Dish, which is about cooking methods instead of recipes. And at that actually, that book is inspired by the Tightwad Gazette, because in that she talks about methods. She has her muffin method and her casserole method. And so I love the methods, and I have a muffin method, but it's done with soaked muffin batter, which is a traditional foods way of making grains easier on the stomach. So that's Design a Dish. And then I have Real Food Hits the Road, Stock the Real Food Pantry, Stretchy Beans, And then my two newest books are Sourdough for Your Food Storage and Sprouting for Your Food Storage, or Sprouts for Your Food Storage.
Those sound great. That sounds like just a wealth of information for people just jumping into learning different kitchen skills. What should I ask you, or what would you like to share that I don't know enough about you to ask?
Well, maybe I don't know enough about me to share. Um, I, I'm just a ordinary person, really. I'm pretty simple. I I I like easy. I like to stick at home. I like to just, make an easy life most of the time. And then there's a part of me that wants to go out and travel and see the world. And you mentioned backpacking. I love it. We go backpacking and camping, and it's so much fun. So, but when I'm home, I want to be home. But when you can get me out, I want to stay out. So I am just I don't know, a weird combination.
Well, that's awesome. We talked about your website a little bit. Can you just run through all the resources and places that people can find you online?
Yes, so homespunoasis.com is the blog, which I work really hard to put up a new article every week. There was a couple year hiatus when I was writing and not focusing on the blog, but that's been one of my goals for the last years to put up a new article every week. Boy, that's a difficult goal, but I'm sticking with it. Um, and then milliecopper.com is my website for the fiction books. And if you go there, you can click on the Readers Club link and join my weekly. It's a weekly newsletter that I send out, and I give try to make that interesting with preparedness tips and homesteading activities. What we have going on. Plus, that's where I share the latest on the books, what new books are coming out, and what's available. And when you sign up for that, you actually can get a free digital book. I think the offering changes. My daughter, the one that helps me, she keeps up that she does that technical stuff. But I think right now the offering is for it's called Wyoming Refuge, which is the prequel to Havoc in Wyoming. So that's free, free digital in whatever format you want on there. You can find me on Facebook. I have a Millie Copper author is my Facebook page, and I have a Pinterest page that's kind of fun. There's my early books. I kept started a board for each of the books, and I shared my research on the board. And I want to go back and update books 5, 6, and 7 on that. But my computer crashed and I lost all my research papers, my
Oh,
links. I
no.
know. So that's a work in progress. But my Pinterest page is it's there's quite a lot of preparedness information in Pinterest. Um, and I am, and definitely if you're interested in the books, sign up for my Readers Club. I'm also working on getting all of the books put into audio. So right now, the first book, Caldwell's Homestead, is available in audio, but I'm hoping that Katie's journey will be up in audio before the end of June, and then the rest of them at regular intervals until they're all available.
Oh, that's great. So many people just love audiobooks, being able to listen to a book while they're driving to work or something like that. So that's awesome. Listeners, I will link all of these resources and places that you can find Millie in the show notes. So you can find those there when we're done listening for today. We are coming up on an hour, Millie, and I have so much enjoyed this conversation with you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's been very fun, and I'd love to, chat with you again. And any of your listeners that want to reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to talk with them if they have any additional questions that I can answer.
Thank you so much. And listeners, thank you for joining in today. I hope you enjoyed hearing bits of Millie's journey, and you can check the show notes if you'd like to contact her, or if you have any questions for Millie, her information will be there. And as always, prepared, not scared. Thanks for listening.